afternoon, Americans. This is your favorite alien in Bubba on Saturday, September 7th. Sitting in for Paul Harvey today. Stand by for the rest of the story. Well, there was this young man who, at 30 years old, was an accomplished doctor in the Army. So he got sent to Fort Brown in Texas, over by the coast. And he got there in 1884, and poor guy, that was a bad year to go to Fort Brown because he ended up with yellow fever. Oh, big time. Anyway, he got sick, so they took him north. They didn't say where, but I'm assuming, like Austin or someplace there like that. But anyway, he met this nice lady, and he was one of the rare guys who beat yellow fever and recuperated 100%. Well, the next year he married the young lady that he met, and up until his death, they lived a nice long life. Well, the young doctor, in 1898, was a very accomplished Army doctor, and the Spanish-American War broke out. He was in Florida fighting yellow fever, and he had studied another Army doctor, procedures to fight yellow fever with the mosquitoes, but he also assumed that malaria was caused by mosquitoes too. Up until then, they didn't know. So he tried to fight both at the same time. Then again, the Spanish-American War broke out, and he ended up in Havana with the other Army doctor. And his approach, even though it was like the other Army doctors, was a little different. And brass and the medical community didn't like what he was doing, because he was proposing that you have a hygiene way of fighting yellow fever and malaria. First, fumigate to eliminate the mosquitoes, then drain all the swamps and standing water, create a good sanitation system. And they thought he was nuts. Well, he did that. He was appointed sanitation director of Havana in 1898. Then in 1904, Teddy needed a sanitation director for the new Panama Canal project that he was doing. So he went to Panama along with the chief engineer, John Stevens, which was a civilian. Now, John Stevens, like the medical community, didn't like the way he wanted to do things, and he fought him tooth and nail. Well, John Stevens made the mistake of putting his wife and his daughter into Panama, and unfortunately they both contracted yellow fever and passed away. That broke John Stevens. And his second in command at the time let him do what he wanted, so he started the sanitation program in late 1904. By 1907, when John Stevens left, the sanitation program was well underway. They had fumigated everything, even though he didn't like DDT, but he needed to use that to kill the things. But then he went and dried every swamp he could find, and paved all streets, develop a sanitation system, develop a plumbing with processed, water like you have today, the drinking water. And he did that for not only the canal zone, but Panama. And he also developed a hospital, which was there until the end of the canal zone. Then, in 1907, like I said, John Stevens left, and one of his cohorts from the Spanish-American War was appointed by President Roosevelt. George Washington Goethals was appointed chief project guy at the Panama Canal. So he, from 1907 to its construction in 1914, was responsible for everything done. Mr. Goethals liked the doctor's point of view, and he let him have carte blanche. So by 1909, everything was done. Yellow fever became a memory. Even to this day in my home country, it became a memory. And his job was done. So he left, went back to the States. In 1914, he was appointed Surgeon General of the Army, which he held till 1918 when he retired. And unfortunately, he died a young death. He was 64 years old in 1920 when he passed away. And no, for those of you who think you know the rest of the story, nope, it wasn't Walter Reed. The guy in question is Dr. William Crawford Gorgas. He created a nice hospital, which, like I said, up until the time the canal zone ceased to exist in 1979, was the best hospital around in Latin America. Gorgas Hospital I know because I've been there a few times. It saved me a couple times, so I know about Gorgas Hospital. And I do have a debt of gratitude to Dr. Gorgas for what he did there, not only for me, but for the other people. He saved a lot of lives in the creation of the Panama Canal, but you Americans forgot about him. Walter Reed got all the credit for Havana in the 1898, but he didn't understand that malaria was caused by mosquitoes. And Dr. Gorgas did. And he was way above his time because he didn't like DDT, but it would take another 60 years from his time before DDT was actually outlawed. But he also told the Panamanian people that you should develop mosquito netting. And up until the time I was a kid in the 60s, the rural people in Panama used to have netting all around their beds, even though the mosquito situation was well under control by that time. So you see, Americans, you think you know the rest of the story, but you don't. And I bet you a lot of people were saying, who the blank is William Crawford Gorgas? To me, he should get more respect than Walter Reed did. But he is a minor guy in your history, even though he was Surgeon General of the Army. But in Panama, he is God, even today. Mr. Gorgas, we owe you a debt of gratitude. Your country owes you a debt of gratitude, but they don't know about that. So now you know the rest of the story. This is your favorite alien and Bubba sitting in for Paul Harvey today, saying good day.